Hello, Galaxy. This is your Supreme Leader, Kylo-Ren, and you are listening to Girls with Sabers.
Hello, this is Emrys, and before we continue, I just want to give a trigger warning. We will be talking very briefly about 9/11 and child abuse in Generation X and Y. We do not go into any graphic details, nor do we show any violent pictures. We do show destruction of buildings and surroundings. Please, if that's something that is going to cause you mental harm or distress, take care and skip this podcast. We wish you well. And as part of Generation X, he has, like Generation X, been stereotyped and proclaimed destined to fall. You like see those 80 movies that was like said over and over, you punk, my generation worked da 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 da, and then they like claim that these 1980s teenagers were going to fail and fall.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really interesting because now we know when these Generation X kids have grown up, we see that their marriage lasts more than the marriage of the previous generation of the baby boomers. The Latchkey Children Initiative made them more independent. They have an interest of being the middle generation, which means the baby boomers were a very, very increased population of the world, and the millennials, Generation Y, is increased population of the world, and the Generation X is right in the middle. So this is what killed me. Are you ready to be killed?
I'm ready to be killed.
Okay. The Generation X likes to take what they have learned from the past and bridge it to the future. Let me repeat that. They got good at bridging the past with the future.
I'm sorry, I died. Wow, sounds a lot like the sequel trilogy.
Yes.
Oh, jeez. I don't know why people are so bent out of shape. It's right in front of us.
Yeah, let the past die. They were talking about how Generation X was the Kurt Cobain generation of like, they're like the whatever, they're the emo kid or the punk rock kid, or, they have like hostility and rage in their youth, but once they started maturing and growing up, became more of a mature understanding of let's disturb the status quo in a good way. Let's take what we know from the past and let's bridge it with the future. And they talked about how all these big companies now like Apple and Google and YouTube are all run by generational X. The people who grew up with games and VHS movies, and they're very media centered. And here you have Ben, who has been gathering and learning how to do the calligraphy of the past. Why? Because I think he has this idea of what the Jedi should be, with bridging what they knew from the past with this new understanding with the future. He has this understanding of the new of technology, but he also understands the what the baby boomers and his previous generation understood and knew.
Yes.
It just amazed me. It also amazed me that I was reading an article about them. They are also the generation that is known to deal with the most mental issues. That there's an increase in depression, increase in bipolar disorders, increase in that, and you see that with Ben Solo. The separation of his family, the fact that he was a quote unquote latchkey, made him feel like his parents threw him away like garbage. And like we said, not all latchkey children felt this way.
Right.
But Ben did.
Yes.
And that's the significance. Ben felt this way. Not necessarily that his parents had, but that's how he interpreted the situation.
Yes.
You also see that misinterpretation or that other interpretation in what happened with Luke. Having your saber ignited over the bed of your nephew is a horrific thing.
Yes, it's traumatic. Even if it was just a fleeting moment and it passed,
Yes.
it was still, you were still standing over your nephew, saber ignited, and him waking up to that.
There were 3 perspectives of that scene. 3 different
Yes.
times. One
Yes.
was Luke wanting, was the more idealistic
Yes.
interpretation where
Yes.
he could not tell Rey the full truth.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was Ben's.
Yes.
And Ben, you see him, Luke basically having green Sith eyes. I know Sith
Yeah.
eyes are not green. Ben's vision, that was
Mhm.
Luke swinging with no hesitation, just wanting to
Mhm.
kill and strike him down. Well,
Mhm.
Luke never did that.
No.
Luke had it ignited, but he never wanted to strike his nephew down at that moment. So you see Ben misinterpreting something. Yes, it's traumatic. Yes, it was wrong. Yes, it's horrifying and horrible. And he has every right to be upset and mad and have, I fully believe he has post-traumatic stress disorder because of it, but he has a slight misinterpretation of it. Okay, and it's kind of like his parents. Yes, his parents did give him away. Yes, it was horrible. Yes, it was an awful decision. Yes, they needed to listen to their son, but their parents didn't give him away because they didn't love him, didn't care about him. So
Yes.
he needs to kind of re-understand his family and
Yes.
forgive.
What they did was not malicious. It was out of love. They thought what they were doing was the best for him.
Yeah.
And I always looked at what happened with Luke after that moment. I came out of the theater thinking to myself just about the character of Luke Skywalker in general. I came to the conclusion that I would have been worried about the direction of Luke Skywalker if he didn't exile himself after that.
Yeah.
If he just went on hiding from the First Order, hiding from Ben, but not feeling any remorse over what he did. Yeah, he hid the truth, like the real truth from Rey, but that's because he didn't know her.
And he was
And
still dealing with shame.
and he was still, yes, exactly. He was still dealing with shame. But I would have really worried about the state of Luke Skywalker if he didn't feel shame, if he didn't feel remorse, if he didn't feel he needed to atone.
I'm gonna put this back to Ben. But one thing that was discussed in the novel, which I think is very important, is Luke also saw Kylo Ren as a shell around a broken boy
Yes.
that he tried
Mhm.
so hard to fix. Like Luke has this idea that if he grew up with Anakin and Padme alive, he would be just like Ben Solo.
Yeah.
He would be a spoiled prince, basically.
Mhm.
He would, he said, I would be the same entitled boy. I'd be a son of legends. I'd be the son of the Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker and a son of a queen, Senator Padme Amidala. It's the spirit of entitlement. I am own these things. You owe me. I was supposed to be the chosen one. So it's this duality of I'm useless. I have this label of being lost, but it's at the same time I'm entitled to it. And I
Yeah.
think, Hux is also part of this. There was a lot of uproar about how the First Order is not intimidating enough and, blah, blah, blah. Well,
Mhm.
that's what happens when you label a whole generation as useless and don't
Yeah.
train them like they are useful. I mean,
Yeah.
you had Hux and Ben being told that they were useless.
Yeah.
And that's not a way to raise leaders. And so we're seeing the repercussions.
It's not a way to build an army.
It's not.
They're building an army of from children.
Yeah. You had no leaders or no true leadership. They were all labeled as, you know, you're worth nothing. Where the previous generations, the ones that trained the baby boomers, didn't label people like that.
But look at what it takes for the family to realize their errors. A nobody from a sand planet coming in and dropping truth bombs on the whole Skywalker line.
The other half of the protagonist is Rey, and I believe she is Generation Y, or the Millennials, and their generation is about approximately from 1981 to 1997. And I did the math. If Rey is 19, and me doing math is, so, be kind if I didn't get it right. But yeah, okay, so I figured, we might have to edit this if I'm wrong, but I figured if Rey was 19 in 2015, that means that she was born in 1996. So she would be just the very last half of the very, 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 very last few years of millennials. What really is a event that has made its mark on the millennials is 9/11.
So these millennials had to deal with 9/11, or parents that were bringing up their children in this time. 9/11, Great Recession, Obama election. There's less marriage going around. Religion, political affiliation. It was all going absolutely cattywampus.
They didn't have it. All these
right, exactly.
All these established institutions of religion, of marriage, of like whatever brought you together as a group, they were not a huge part of this generation at all. So,
like you said, the complete aftermath of terrorism, definitely mistrusting of government. It was a war at home. Certainly not a civil war like you would think of as an actual war. But no matter what side of any aisle you were on, it's a war. It's a war on the home front. It's a war with your next door neighbor. Rey's upbringing, as we know it right now, she had two parents that sold her for drinking money and left her in the arms of a monster. In her eyes, Unkar Plutt was a monster. How do you deal with that at such a young age? You can't. So she had to raise herself. And the things she's seen is just absolutely horrific. Yet she came out okay, if that's what you want to call it. Is she really okay? No, but she's now under this mass suppression of the truth. I have to get back home. My family's coming for me. The family you think is coming for you is not coming for you. But there's someone who still could. Maz tells her to not wait for the past, to turn towards the future. Someone could still come for her. Someone, singular. Not two people, not her parents. Her parents are never coming back. Whether you believe that it was the drunkards that sold her, or a couple that gave her up because they felt it was the right thing. No matter. Either way, her parents aren't coming back for her. And she knows it. Deep down, she knows this. One person can come back for her. Now you see this, Emrys brought this up before, where Generation X and the back half of Generation Y are coming together and building families that stay together. The divorce rate is way down. Communication is way up. Not that they're not learning from mistakes, not that they're not making mistakes. They're not stagnant, they are learning and they are growing, and they're doing it together. A lot of people will disagree with that, looking at what's going on around us, going, how is anyone listening to anyone else? Everything's a hot take. But what Star Wars does is goes one step beyond and says, no, this is how we overcome that. We have to work together. We have to listen to each other. That's what it is, whether you believe that or not.
And if you look at the themes of this generation, 9/11, no establishment, you can basically see Jakku. There's nowhere safe for this little girl to run. There's no family. There's no there's the Church of the Force that Laura Santeca runs, but that is not a place where she can go far away to.
Which is very symbolic of you can't even trust the church anymore.
Yeah.
In general, you can't even rely on the church. You have to fend for yourself.
There's no political. There's no. I mean, it's very lawless on Jakku.
Yep.
And it looks like a political graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
And you have those institutions have fallen. And she's literally scavenging for some sort of truth, some sort of thing that she can survive on, some sort of thing that could feed her. And it's very much like, if you look at 9/11, the lesson that many people felt they learned is their government can't even keep them safe anymore. You're really seeing metaphorically how Generation Y sees their childhood in the eyes of Rey of Jakku. And the baby boomer generation, they were the first generation to have the highest drug, alcohol, and illicit drug use. So addiction is very much a theme of the baby boomers. Again, this is stereotypes and studies and generalizations. I'm sure,
Yes.
alcoholism, drugs have been a problem for generations and generations that come after, but this is kind of like what has characterized the baby boomers. If Rey's parents are baby boomers, then she is a product of that alcoholism, where the family, the child is not, it's the baby boomers are known as the me first generation, not the millennials, the baby boomers. What do I want? What do I need? And Rey is the sacrificial product of that. You also see authority figures feeding off of the young or using the young to get what they want. You see that in Carplot, like Luthien pointed out. You also have that with Snoke and Ben. You have the spiritual leader abusing the child because the child is so starved for attention. And like Luthien said, there's no safe place. Don't you think Ben felt that way? He went to Luke. Luke is this, this hero of the Force, of the spiritual movement, of the Jedi, the good guys. He wakes up, he sees this good guy standing over his bed with a lightsaber. Then he goes to the dark and he gets physically, mentally, and emotionally abused. It's just all of these issues are rising up to the surface, and that's very much, again, an X and Y thing, where the baby boomers, all the generations previously did not talk about abuse openly. They just didn't. it was a hush hush sort of thing. And you see in Generation X and Y, these things are starting to be discussed openly.
With discussing that openly, there is a lot of hope now, which we not only see going on around us, even though a lot of people will say, what's hopeful about it? There's hope. But you see that in Star Wars too, in this story, especially in the title, The Rise of Skywalker. That is a very hopeful title. No matter what happens,
Exactly.
that title is very hopeful. I mean, it is dripping hope. What's great about Rey is that she has that millennial mentality of no matter what has been happening to her, she does not give up hope. And everyone feels that she ended it with Kylo Ren on Crate, which she did. She did not close the door on Ben Solo. She closed the door on Kylo Ren, as she should have, because dude's flippin' toxic. Dude is a killer. And we're probably going to talk about that more in depth in upcoming podcasts, but we've already talked about it in previous podcasts and video essays too. Dude has committed atrocities, no matter if he's killed one person or 100 people. But it is wartime. And he is also under the influence of Snoke. That doesn't absolve him, but Kylo Ren is going to have to die. But Rey is very hopeful. You read her hope in the novel, especially, where she says if she is going to save Ben Solo, she has to destroy Kylo Ren. Even Rey in the novel looks at them as two different people. That's very hopeful. She even calls him the last hope to Luke. Not only in the film, but in the novel. She says he is our last hope. So millennials are very hopeful.
Yes.
They pick themselves up and they dust themselves off, and they are full of ingenuity. And if this doesn't work, then I'm going to try it this way. She's had to. She's a survivor. She raised herself.
And they have a new optimism of the government.
Yes.
They want to fix
Yes.
it. They want to scavenge,
Yes.
There's a new movement of fixing things that are broken. And you see that with Rey. So, Rey has that optimism. She is the Luke of this trilogy. She has the optimism of Luke. She has a harsher background than Luke ever had, just like the Generation Y has been exposed to more and grew up with terrorism in the homeland. But she still has that hope, and it's been tried and it's been tested, and it will rise up again. In Generation X and Generation Y, technological education was up on the rise, where people are now more adept to understanding how things work and fixing things, as well as education for women. Look at what skills Rey has. Technical skills. How things work, how things operate. I thought, again, that was that beautiful reflection of Rey is truly what Padme's generation wanted to be.
Yoda said it best to Luke when he said, "We are what they grow beyond."
And the end. Hello, this is Emrys, and with Luthien, thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and click on that little bell icon that will give you notifications every time we post a new one. And of course, like, comment, and do all those things. Peace, love, and Raylo, guys.
All magic comes with a price.